Oh, I put a link to a Judge Napolitano in a Scott Ritter video regarding the dangerous world. Scott Ritter also in one of the live streams or YouTube shorts of a Judge Napolitano on his YouTube channel, he said that the world almost ended, and that was like more than a month ago. In other words, I believe or about a month ago. But there are evidences. So obviously, Judge Napolitano and lawyers know more about the law than me, as someone who's not a lawyer. But demonstrably, there are exceptions. Where some ways I'm an expert on this better than them, because I recorded means for us all to be able to discern too. How names on all sides of cases and lawyers in the interbranch have roles switching names, for example, and switching sequences. Sometimes the guilt of the intelligence tied to them, foreign and domestic, too. No, and and, and or in the same time, those same names, the difference of them with that realized apparent only motivations, overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time with the same names in the news and the difference of the names next to them, increasingly collusion slash S with predicate acts methods at each campus recorded. It is recorded that, for example, in this video, people like they're experts on weapons, and people like Scott Ritter knows things about the weapons and trying to make peace, where countries already been torturing each other and killing each other, and then countering that. Where already there was a big game played where there's needs at locations A through Z since before their foundings and right through it, that they need to counter the real worst causes of the worst negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at all locations, areas, and states before American was formally referred to this way. No, so the colonies were in place with slavery overtly slash insidiously against everyone, sickly distinctly too, and sickly non-distinctly, and with the breaching method using and having used functionally, how sickly non-distinctly was left out of, even though that was value where negotiations could have been used to reveal that which was sickly non-distinctly against everyone north and south, and at those other countries involved with it to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures everywhere at once. But everyone was already state forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, only allowed, entertained roles with the breaching method and sensing for it. Otherwise, not even realizing to an extent, knowing that's better than fathomable. That's what the value of what we know was recorded actually. This breaching method made up the excuses for the collusions with itself and with the lie progressions from the formal and informal locations at the same time, increasingly collusions with itself that no one discerned, hiding behind all the ones hyper additionally, now countless, of other things, others, ourselves, being and having been blamed, right, where, and how. Nature itself and our founders told us to blame the breaching method. Right there, we have things like racism blamed. We have self-valued roles with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, uses of the words of our founders, leaving out what they declassified about them, and or self-valuing that, and showing how to get away with it, but pretending that they just had regular subject treatments because that's something they were trained to be experts, using the knowledge of good and evil, readings of the religious books too, both the Old Testament and the Quran and the Bibles, leaving out the value of, even if they don't believe in the first part of the Old Testament, where it says only defend right here. It doesn't say except for sometimes. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together in the part before it, where the identity of all space slash existence is parsing between positive and negative, as an identity, as we know identities are, not just our own species. They are relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And further, not just because both value and identity, and all things have relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But as this which shows us the distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible, and how it is functional to discern it that way. In other words, as we examine with the languages, they're about this. The ancients revealed it, how it is functional, how the parts of speech are about the invisible but still discernible, that come with conjunction slash hyperconjunction to the hyper invisible but still discernible. It is discernible where and how and why we have to appreciate, and how it is manifest, the way we have to appreciate more than one name for a verb, a participle nature, a present participle, for example, or a past participle, a gerund, which is a verb taken in the state where it's no longer used as a verb. It's a verb with an ing ending. And so we have also the predicate is a name for a verb that we need too. A predicate is a main verb. And see, they're conjunctions to each other, but also slash hyperconjunction. Slash S because there are parts of the singular. It is like it is an identity that has time shown to us. Three parts of time grouped distinctly from how three parts of time that we don't know. In other words, there's an extent of the past that we know is true always. There's an extent active now we know is true always. There's an extent as the value of seasons we know of their value here now. We know of their identity, its identity, relation to itself, and the value of that. That identity that is distinct species bodies being distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously like each other because we are like it that way. And this together with that is in demonstration of how it is making hyper additional nature, which appreciates it's a special difference in scientific method, or its difference is forced from here, lethal IDs, force-based nature transfer. So yeah, countries A through Z, the identities, certain type of victim slash hyper victim pretended, really only discerned. Okay, well, this is we all look like we're all from the same country. With the same name, we're the same team. They never had possession of their names. The suburbs were designed from America to Russia to Ukraine, with slavery entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies, and then America's founders were born. And from the moment, and already, from before they even found out about the American Revolution, and all these, people breaking those laws forced people to hurt each other, individually grouped and together, play through as roles, collusions too. With on top of that, a breaching method was hurting everyone even worse, and keeping all natures of collusion of help people helping to each other to do damage control, heal each other, help each other, all that as collusions too, because the breaching method needs criminal and seditious natures of positives appearing to appear for influences of syntax, and criminal and seditious natures of negatives collusions overtly and seriously too, at the same time to keep its identity of relativity to all things and to all names individually grouped together. To begin to discern this, begin to discern how nature itself shows us that we have to contemplate what are the things that are true always that slavery was about. And one of the things that is true always that it was about was a human fact nature breaching method that employed reactions and or non-reactions, and the difference of it were relativity with subject treatments. For example, proper science does not leave out the breaching method from the subject of slavery. It does not leave out the phrase criminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers originally and still being used to screen actual motivations in other nations' names involved with them and with news at the same time. All nature and the difference between the news locations and the names, roles, with uses of public television locations. The same ones increasingly on off state corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with whole wire crime acts and methods that that and then cover-ups of that, increasingly showing the only means it needs to be able to get away with that is by self-valuing where and how all interactions with formal identities of the law are stayed and have stayed criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, collusion /S. But no one, not they, not A through Z, from the most sophisticated to the least sophisticated, and both them have, both, the whole spectrum has roles with self-value, with the Constitution abridged, pretending to care for other, uses of knowledge of good and evil about the Constitution, about the laws, to get over on fact treatment nature, to get over on why and how simultaneously / hyper simultaneously per science. We're supposed to value the Constitution unabridged, and we're supposed to describe those original abridgments having been influenced by the hyper foreign at A through Z, hurting everyone sickly distinctly too, using functionally too, how sickly non-distinctly everyone A through Z are the victims of the same things, like suburbs, as they are actually manifest, and as the nature of the debate regarding the validity of someone's logic or premises treatments when they mention that and how before America's founders were born, they had people based on the color of their skin as slaves in the houses with the people that enslaved them. Not because, and note, they had roles with the people that were forced to be slaves. They were forced to be different levels of it and against themselves. Because the difference of that, everyone's measured and maintained, leaving out how we are a human species body of individual bodies, with all group differences, plural, being and having been generated by the hyper-native one. See, president / chief has 3 identities of volume, 3 distinct identities of hyper-invisible but still discernible. Like those 3 parts of time, bound, all gathered round, boxing. And there's the extent of time that before the extent of time from the past that was true always. And there's the extent of time that is now active, which is a whole bunch of other truths that we know that we don't know about. And there's the extent of the future that we know we don't know about, connected to that portion we know about, like the seasons, like their value, like relativity / hyper-relativity to it. No theory. Like means to appreciate, people have been, the nature of the debate regarding the validity of if someone uses evidences that are written or not. There's another word. Hyper-programming is capable of being now, too. Because leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in the World Trade Center attack, context /S, and since, long-term and short-term, people with the name, the moral, had collusion /S through time with names at next to each of the campuses I went to. I was a littlest kid. Made for them also by others. per breaching method also recorded involved with method/S. They have mail crime methods, wire crime methods, the police forms, the private tie to them, a whole bunch of foreign and domestic countries roles with uses of laws, pretend they can speak about morality and law here or there, and then they fight with each other where they could pull out instances, but it's always as collusions with that shell game where people are fighting with each other because they're getting over on everyone too with descriptions of things. We know that there are things that even the Congress has hidden from them. One of the reasons is because states' difference and states' rights and the difference of them criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought self-value, pretending other to screen the breaching method too, not even realizing. You guys can't follow mandated law. In other words, I'm saying you guys. I'm not you guys. In other words, you guys have been trained to self-value. The words of our founders used, leaving out what they declassified about them and about the breaching method/S roles with that breaching method, with the /S part, as nature too. That's why the slash part. Forcing equality of fact should be nature outside of courts that prevented people from demonstrating. No one wanted roles with those crazy laws, including regarding, especially to some ways, regarding which trials were about, regardless if they're completely made up, regardless who made them up for what reasons. Maybe our founders had some kind of needs to do it relative to the breaching method/S that was too entrenched. It was entrenched too deeply. Northern colonies and southern, they had to leave it. Northern states and southern states still had to leave even slavery. They had to hide their roles that were actually as the roles, forcing everyone forced to be a unity, and then to get the Constitution unabridged, and it noted that and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list. So all certain type of victim/hyper victim, as the differences between overt criminal enterprises, private ones. All natures of industries, all natures of A through Z relative to politics, value treatments, from nature of debate, what appears to be debatable. It is not debatable that what we can discern, where and how we can discern that, and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and they're the same. They're about how we are the same color eyes at the same time, being projected to us as the identity, or we are not, but anyway. And even though we are only a little piece of that which is the identity of all space/existence, its complete identity of relationship to itself is inseparable from all parts of itself, individually grouped together, and the only increasing value of that, and its relativity to a special difference, and as a special difference, valued here, or it is forced away from here as a negative identity of relationship it has to itself, where each identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, where it wants and needs and is parsing to make more and more positive that is also positive onto itself, and rolls with that syntactically with the questions and with the answers as they are presented by nature. But now this is nature filtered through and entertaining, being and having been systems individually grouped together, tactically ulterior from that A through Z, as assigned by nature itself, demonstrated to again by its difference, being where and how we have the same color eyes, black, and there are two different colors, black and white, and we have exceptions as an exception nature with the halo part. And we have other species bodies too, with eyes distinct from our own, but also non-distinct and simultaneously. But again, for that further hyper simultaneous, people go, "Oh God!" But exactly the way the breaching method needs them to keep from discernment, the scientific discernment of its identity itself, that which doesn't come with a name as a person, that which is all things and differences, and what is not them at the same time. It is coming to, from, as, with, and for each thing, each part of each thing, each group part of it, and all together too. In demonstration of what's generating all plural things. Vaccines. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are grouped by the identity of all space/existence itself, as the identity the sciences share. This is why it says at the beginning of the Old Testament, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. And I apologize to Mexico and to President Trump when I say build wall, because my last name is Wall. In other words, because it's a serious thing, but clearer than day. People from countries A through Z miss what really is going on with borders. In other words, see again, cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /S, and also how water and its elements and gases and its elements and relativity to positive, negative too are going through cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall /S. There are 5 identities of sequence /simultaneous nature here. I mean, in other words, it's also group 3 ways. But in other words, we are a quality diffusion that English was revealed to teach about. But we have sabotage of the reception of the ancients, as is most probable, and as is actually capable of being by them, hyperarchaeologically, for example, so to speak. I'll whisper Greek, which I believe is the name of a Native American tribe, of which there are many, but it's just like there are many families. And see, the Native Americans themselves and the founding presidents themselves, they never had a campus that wasn't criminally foreign influence to go to. They were never at a location, area, and state that didn't have a human fact, human nature breaching method that already had roles perfected with itself, or that body was sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, including if that body was everyone. Already had roles with that since before modern religious messengers were even born. Also, there are collusions with the shell game, with people that they're labeling terrorists, and with, like, in other words, and with their narratives regarding the head job. In other words, the military has criminally foreign influence readings of religious books because they have self-value roles with collusions, with differences brackets, where they stack fake things in databases, and the differences of their guilt or the ones with the courts, family members with them, or the retired police chiefs, or the foreign military, or the foreign intelligence. All these countries have roles with the campuses together. And the difference of it there or next to where or at where they live or next to where they live. The names. So this is a method that ducks behind names and with sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase. But relative, to which we are not allowed to, draw reference to hyper evidentially. And this is because of how all sides in criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, their family members, their sources, and at the same time, the courts, the news, names at the crime scenes next to them, the intelligence, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, at the same time, names at next to body dumping spots, roles we use / estimate that even all of the ones involved don't know. Recorded, we can discern it, but it should. In other words, it shows all sides of criminal. It shows. It shows. You know, a breaching method had roles with the logic of A through Z, with the most serious subjects, formally, private, and informally, A through Z, and all natures of like news and journal. I'm not a licensed journalist. Licensed journalists are influenced to lie and to pretend that and to tell truths as collusions with criminal and ceaseless natures of positives and negatives to hide recorded roles with criminally foreign influence predicate acts with facts methods and with tactical delusions. So little kids and adults from New York City, for example, and from Hartford, Connecticut, and from suburbs, let alone the cities. See, suburbs have means to some ways too to discern better than the cities do. That clearer than day, there are juxtaposed a whole bunch of different predicate acts with facts methods and roles of them forced to entertain. Otherwise, that body is sensed. And relative to where and to how. The collusions, one of the worst things that's involved with it is a behavior racketeering. Lying about motivations for the breaching method. Lying about motivations as sides with both sides of issues. And their motivations with other people involved with it. It's really why and how it's recorded really why and how. Leave out how we have nature's identity discernible. Pretend such is debatable and get away with it. You have to self-value the past campuses having been stayed criminally foreign influence. They need to pretend they could speak on difference. Like the difference between America and Russia. The suburbs from America to Russia to Ukraine look almost exactly alike, and they were designed, they were forced. I would learn at Central Connecticut State University, there were crazy terror laws against anyone for found out even having heard on someone speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations. And also uses of bravery, examples of bravery are involved with phishing to cover up collusion /s, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, identity theft, fraud, slander roles against all Americans individually grouped and together. That's what it's about when you guys are fighting and pretending debatable. That predicate acts with facts methods are discernible relative to where and to how we have black pupils, whites, not advised. And that and the breaching method too is left out with subject treatments as serious as slavery. That was shown that needs to pretend it doesn't realize keeping what's serious treated criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. It shown needs to pretend that it cares about the names involved with wars and our titles, the value of it, or just or this person would you do the nature of debate. I said they cannot focus on the answer which is predicate acts with facts, what's actually recorded, right from the founding locations. Other is being and having been communicated for our founders, and they communicated. Again, using what they said to an extent, at least knowing it's plausible that they were being used remotely, criminally point influence, tactically delusions raw when they were speaking, for like usually with music playing, not for the reasons realized. Since you guys were kids, you had each age of fact, human nature is measured and maintained. You see, this preaching method knew that the humanity is shown, and humanity showed the ancients why and how really we need three branches of government manifest and explained, and exceptions and exception nature to it. It understood. Because nature uses exception nature distinctly from all other identities of volume, while it is simultaneously non-distinct from them. / non-distinct from them. Because it has three identities of relationship to itself. In other words, in perspective, in other words, it has the difference of that and five, the way it is grouped 5 ways, is increasingly. In other words, the difference of it and like where how it's only 3 ways. In other words, those 3 parts of time and the other 2. And then it's 3 ways. In other words, it's 3 ways if we look at it where there's an active part too. Because that's what we're being shown when we're being shown to just by nature itself, to discern the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, like A, therefore B, with Boolean logic, like regarding the validity, or one thing science is A through Z are certain type of victim / hyper victim, where and how from off all location / S. There was collusions with what no one wanted and to have collusions with. But everyone had no choice and has no choice more and more because it tactically denatured the humanity's and nature's identity of relationship to itself and its roles with exceptions in exception nature. It has each human longing water, not to have our identity relationship to the rivers. All the industries are on top of the river because they had no other way to move, and they had no industry. I mean, not because they had no industry. In other words, they had no means to defend themselves, so they had to make industry. But they were also forced to be on top of the waters. The wars themselves were forced to maintain collusions cover-ups and other things to appear only capable of being blamed for what really caused wars to be the nature they were, and names A through Z to blame other things, others for themselves and ourselves for things the breaching method caused. That which came hyper additional from America, Russia, and Ukraine that none of our founders wanted, but it was already entrenched in through their foundings because it already had everyone measured through themselves, because it already had postures, also all groupings of humanity, all natures of difference, like lawyers, police, judges, prosecutors, people associated with religions. The beginning of the Quran, too. The beginning of the Quran comes with a part that says all that matters is if people are going to be honest about the identity of use. Do they agree in the use of the identity of the naming, the scientific value of the identity of the hyper-simultaneous or not? And it qualifies that right at the beginning of the Quran, where it says all. It doesn't say pray. It says only. Keep it real about this. And then it qualifies that for any individual. It even says, too, if they're honest about it and they don't believe it, love them. But it qualifies it, too. It tells that person not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason if they don't believe in it, or they see discern means not to. Doesn't tell them they have to wear a hijab where there were exceptions made for that by war tactics, things like that. That's because the people read. See, the breaching method and our founders knew, and the religious messengers knew that they had to write things down, and because they didn't have free speech at the time, so they had to put a portion of it. And you, excuse me, and the nature of it itself, simultaneously, that the breaching method would have to counter multi-front, because the breaching method needs roles with its criminal insidiousness nature of employments, of syntax, collusion/S, with the formal breaching method against everyone, even when they're helping each other, because it's screening the breaching method's roles with everyone's syntax used remotely, factual nature, quality aspects in nature. One can't, in other words, so there are collusions, fake sides. In other words, the Constitution is abridged. Locations, areas, and states are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, including America's founding locations. Increasingly, people tied to the founding locations in Wethersfield, Connecticut, have roles at and next to the campuses, with people involved with wire crimes in Wethersfield police, intercities at and next to the campuses, through time, not for the motivations apparent, even when some of them are real. And in other words, so that's why it's important to get the interbranch of been forging and switching names. That's hyper evidential. In other words, and use/s of that is also hyper evidential. But it comes as means to discern how, where, and how names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, their family members, the courts, the same thing. The intelligence tied to them, the difference of that, same thing. On all the state corrections offices, on all the state judicial branch offices, roles of wire crime acts, methods, all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, behavior racketeering, acting, pretending for reasons other than are real, needs to hide lie, progression, self-value that are classified things that aren't even classified. It's just how they have all the countries in the news shared here and there with natures of peace that are criminally foreign influence natures of peace, and collusions with the differences between the collusions of sciences A through Z and natures of industries A through Z. Those collusions, though, however, are where and how they make subject treatments or names treatments, and where and how there are use/s of that as they are actually recorded. This is relative to what really most furthers and further the worst natures of criminal enterprises. There are a whole bunch of distinct natures of criminal enterprises, and murders and names next to the body don't make spots, and names next to the news spots and news names themselves involved between campuses and next to them, with their family members planting all along roads and routes, all along Franklin Avenue next to Harvard Hospital, is increasingly involved with people, with the judges and the courts and the police families, like Wethersfield Police and the Brent Superior Court's Facebook pages. They have roles also with the principal child defenders and more people involved with the upskirts with him and with the intelligence at the locations, with all locations/S. In other words, foreign and domestic. There were all these countries in here before our founders were born. They had designed the suburbs in what was only capable of unfolding, and anyone's going to dispute that, they would have been sensed through their own. That's some kind of nature. The natures of industries and people were only allowed in sciences names from off those locations. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method, and where we can discern it in what is true always, which requires us to discern the collusions that the breaching method forced, A through Z, and the differences, like with this original shell game and motivation, juxtaposed with all these hyper additional ones, including the original ones. Self-value used to screen the breaching methods roles with those crazy laws. So, in other words, even if slavery was made up, regardless who made up what, for what reason, it's still being and having been used by the breaching method too, to measure and maintain other communicated for our founders than they communicated, and to measure and maintain self-value roles with uses of their words, leaving out what they declassified about that, leaving out what the breaching method they communicated about, leaving about out what nature itself also communicates about this. Black pupils, beard, see the whites of eyes, a cipher too, per nature itself. Didn't read that, but kind of did because of the plan that they had to use, our founders, who then went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan. And to, we're supposed to be honest or allow honesty about the extortion of George Washington. It's not supposed to stay collusions with a whole bunch of people using a whole bunch of facts about history and things that are pretended debatable that aren't even debatable to ignore and to insidiously collude with the nature and or the facts, and the difference of that relative to where and how it's gotten away with, how people don't even let others speak honestly about the extortion of George Washington. Otherwise, that person is sentenced, and roles are collusions are self-valued with fake things stacked into databases on a mass scale against everyone. And then further collusion slash S at where the sciences are manifest and where there are exceptions manifest. Because this has the employments by nature of each age of difference, and with differences is showing us of its own. Where it has us entertaining systems abridged from its own. That can't be abridged. In other words, only positive to itself. Only all positives and negatives. The difference of that. All, in other words, systems, tactical theory of its own can't entertain that and make short words, let alone their protraction properly for its system. It doesn't entertain that. At A through Z. Because A through Z have blamed other things, others ourselves. We're clearer than day. Is most we are obligated to blame our human fact treatment nature breaching method and to allow the discernment of it. But this shows discernment of appreciation of bliss and appreciation of fact treatments, of truth treatments, lie treatments, syntax, and natures, and evidences treatments, syntax and natures, collusions, all kinds of natures of organized crime, drugs, crimes, medicines, crimes, with psychiatrists and their databases, and judges and prosecutors associated with them personally and professionally, foreign and domestic military, at the campuses tied to, like UConn campus, tied to Harvard Hospital and the names next to them of the businesses and houses and people associated with there through the years, have roles of the World Trade Center predicate with attack, roles with child abusers, leaders of kids forced, and these are the same names that are collusion slash S with the names next to each of the campuses through time, increasingly relative to where and to how they have more scams and wire and mail crime methods and putting fake things in databases and legal rackets with the identities of the law and their family members. A bunch of them at Harvard Hospital involved with people with wire crimes with the Wethersfield police and at the campuses with their teachers through time, increasingly involved also with the news and more child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, that they have increasingly time collusion slash S with their victims, also with more child abusers, leaders of kids. Collusions. Whole bunch of people tied to a Joe DeMoro recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They had roles with family members named O'Connor and their neighbors. Also with Eric Jensen and Mike Roberts and people with the police chief Cintron and a Mazzucato family, planting evidence, identity theft, fraud, slander. They take your picture, walking by you, or in other words, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, and they're changing and faking what's actually recorded, and they're putting fake transcripts roles, all sides of criminal and civil cases, collusions. And these are police forms in courts refusing to identify themselves legitimately and refusing to speak about people legitimately. They have been shown how they need to hide their roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. You know, the difference of that and the intelligence tied to them. We're going to examine how campuses, a whole bunch of fire departments, family members involved, real estate agents, a whole bunch of people at the sides of the campuses too, like Central Connecticut State University. People from Weathersfield have roles with uses of this difference of their roles of predicate acts there or at the side of it, as a Justin Klavinskis, as a Mark Violet, as a Rick Cianfaglione, as their roles with judges and prosecutors and their family members, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and some foreign and domestic medical families, and military families too, with the Hartford Hospital. They have been fabricating transcripts, fake ties, fake nature of ties to kids, fake use of drugs by people. It's also people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, tied to them and their neighbors, and their roles with town line locations, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and their roles of more leaders of the kids and abuses of their kids to get them to abuse others, repeat fake things, have fake lie about, really why and how they know people and when. These are people involved with sequence ships leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. Mike Roberts sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Um, a stranger, they have roles planting evidences with bomb stuff with the people with the state judicial branch offices and involved with a Rick Cianfaglione, and increasingly a whole bunch of people from other parts of areas tied to the Hangdog Lane in the corners of streets that, like the corner of High Crest Street and Hangdog Lane. There are prosecutors and judges in a whole bunch of different countries involved with other corners on that street, planting evidences, with people involved with wire crimes, with Hartford Police, New Britain Police, Weathersfield Police, with the same houses, personally and professionally involved with them, and with Interbrand switching names, and also with collusion with all sides of cases, and in the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center towers, right before the attack, and since. Please apologize to Mike Pence because you guys hid this. You guys and to President Trump and to President Obama and to President Biden. You guys bring up his mental health as collusions with the rackets going down there. Fake transcripts in the databases there. Whole bunch of people that know my name, I don't know their name, tied to this Ray Colon, Joe DeMoro. Their roles with body dumping spots. Whether I'm not saying they kill people and the names next to them. Like there was a Tuttle House that used to be there years ago in the Bray. Has something to do with confessions of Ray Colon and Joe DeMoro regarding their educators. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirming their extended family members. They said they have, that's their family member. One's with the name Scalora, involved with predicate acts with police on my street. They make confessions. They're switching names. They have falsified police reports. They have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders with people named Scalora at and next to the World Trade Center attack. And the court next to it is one of the spots next to it they're involved with. Criminally foreign influence. The front door of my hotel, the timing of it being there, right before the night before the World Trade Center attack with a Clyde Scalora. Pretty sure that was her. In other words, She has roles with the people with the Wethersfield police, with Saudis. They forced the collusions with them with predicate acts. Also, with how they have theft of America's identity and the value of their title. In other words, a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with intelligence, with behavior, racketeering, fake ties, fake nature of ties, and fake motivations for it, and screening with a whole bunch of countries along Route 3 and along Route 175 and their conjunctions and conjunctions to that. Like the state judicial branch offices. And in other words, this is also all along, like where for Franklin Avenue touches the Hartford and Wethersfield, and it's got the state corrections offices right there. People at the corrections offices and next to it, or just driving by to that difference was is used as the people involved with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut with the Saudi attackers and with all sides, because there was another side, because the Saudi attackers were also used to use Saudi Arabia's identity remotely. Also, you guys are confessing things when you speak and when you don't speak. In other words, WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about the World Trade Center attack as their collusions with all sides for a further recorded side involved, not A through Z. Two, because we have all sides of criminal and civil cases. They were shown they need to hide collusion /S with the same sequence shifts and the difference between them roles with it or the courts or the intelligence tied to them. This just keeps a whole bunch of differences, rackets, roles. This keeps overt criminal enterprises and different natures of cultures of people. And this is uses of culture, cultural natures of culture, use tactical terror from the culture that is showing us. Its culture. It's why our species has two eyes, just like other species, distinctly but non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but per that which is further hyper simultaneous, and per the means that we're supposed to be using to teach this, so we don't have to keep repeating it, and then to build on it, because there are all kinds of revelations that come from this. It means to discern other things, others ourselves, maintained consciously, blame for things that our founders in nature itself shows us to blame on the human fact nature breaching method, the predicate acts with facts method, that is clearer than day. The real cause is worst of the negative, like murders and the shootings in Hartford, Connecticut, let alone New York City. The difference between that. Hartford, Connecticut, and Wethersfield, Connecticut had roles with George Washington, excuse me, explained by the quote experts unquote tactical terror from how they communicated to have themselves understood and their roles with these locations that had to be counter extorted and had to leave slave, really why and how they had to leave slavery. In other words, no one wanted roles with that. They tried to speak that's the ones involved with the revolution. And in other words, no one had free speech. Everyone was fact. Chief nature was play. Again, too, sickly distinctly to measure and maintain. Who's going to bring up houses sickly non-distinctly? Even though it was against everyone, sickly non-distinctly too. That's why in more and more, just like the oceans, sickly non-distinctly, and no one wants the oceans more and more polluted. All exceptions, exception nature come with demonstrations of the same thing. But rather than do that, it's either A or B. In other words, if all locations, areas, and states force our leaders to either entertain the economies as is or counters as is, because those counters, there's collusions too. The isms uses. You guys have tactically ignored with all kinds of natures of drugs and medicines, more than there are streets in Hartford, Connecticut, and houses on them. Hartford Hospital has, under fake medicine, on all kinds of legal scams with their patients and criminals, including ones. That's why there are proofs that they have intelligence families that go in, pretend to be patients. They're just being fake transcripts there. Fake difference of the patients faking things and the people pretending things were recorded. A bunch of people with tied to and as one's named Leahy and Lombardo involved with federal crimes with people out the state, the Weathersfield Community Center involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with themselves, and more child defenders, leaders of kids, and roles fake with behavior racketeering, sequence shift, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, pretending little predicate acts into databases roles. Increasingly, as people that had roles with home break-ins in my area years ago, and relative timed collusion, wire crime acts and methods with the Weathersfield police, who have further roles with more years apart, first forced child abusers, leaders of the kids, and a Robert Rodriguez, who brought up confessions also about the Scaloras, who I don't know, that have pretended others through time. They tried to make a fake exception with Glastonbury intelligence. And increasingly, Glastonbury intelligence people have been recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, people involved with the name Scalora. That there are people with the name DeMaul and Cololo who have wire crimes, mail crimes with them, with people named O'Brien too, and with intercities, the roles with the court switching names, forging names, speaking fake things in the records, fake ties to little kids with foreign and domestic medical families, ones of badges, people with gavels, their family members. You need to get them on paper, one name and sequence, and please separate me from the fake communications with WFSB involved here. They have a Kuwaiti general involved, and it's a federal crime to make such things up. They're involved with the Dean Keys, a whole bunch of people with the difference between the community colleges and the campuses as fire campuses, medical campuses, a whole bunch of fire campuses, family members involved with names from Hartford Hospital. And there's a Paul Aptet and his sister, I don't know at all, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by Connecticut courts and FBI and Weathersfield courts, and people that type on there with them who are collusions with them, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at grammar schools and middle schools. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles of people planting fake things in databases, increasingly ties to mayors involved. I found out also how they have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities and the logic and nature of other natures, all natures of politicians, and differences of them. People who can't speak for the difference and appreciate the difference, the revelations with it, with how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, and nature teaching us about difference here. They can't speak about the difference between Republican and Democrat, except for the way the breaching method needs them to measure and maintain collusion /S with those differences used to hide behind. All locations, areas, and states, all fact, human natures. In other words, each age of them, the difference between our side, criminally foreign influence, or other countries, overt criminal enterprises, at the same time, the news is fault. That difference is exploited too. In other words, follow mandated law. That's where bravery comes from. It was, but not changing and faking what people say about the World Trade Center predicate act. Who disbelieves? All we need is a who disbelieves act, and we'll clear out the worst causes of negative value, nature, progression, accident, and Sandy Hook campuses had and have more collusions than FBI too. They should fear God for their roles with their narratives, even if all that was made up regarding their roles with I forgot his name, Alex Jones. They may take all sides of issues because you're shown how to do that and get away with it by the breaching method. That's why they can't follow. That's one of the answers of why and how they can't follow mandated law, where nature's showing us to discern too how there is natural law. There's an identity of natural law. Black pupils. This is culture's course. I'll drop the force. Vaccines. I teach us things belong. Vaccines. Merry Christmas, people. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Control the mind.